The good news is, yay, I figured out technology, which, if you know me at all, you know that that is a huge challenge. The bad news is that my allergies decided today they were going to steal my voice. So if you see me sucking on a lozenge or drinking a lot of tea, that is me trying to continue to keep this up as long as I possibly can. Um, it says I'm Lisa Troidal Iriarte, but I'm actually Elle E. That is my pen name, Elle E. And unfortunately, I could not present under that name since I have her as a page and not as my actual Facebook homepage. So I'm presenting as me today. Don't tell anybody. Uh, I am an author of science fiction and urban fantasy romance for Dream Spinner Publications. I have two books out at this time. I have Vicious Circle, and then I have the first book in the Stormfront series, which is Threadbare. The second book comes out in 9 days, and that is Patchwork, book 2 of the Stormfront series. Also, I believe Threadbare is on sale right now for $1.99 for the Kindle version. So if you haven't read it yet, here's a golden opportunity to pick it up at a really great price. So today I am going to be reading a piece of chapter 2 for all the people who prefer Kelly, one of the two main characters in Threadbare. Threadbare is science fiction, lesbian romance, and I am going to read the chapter in which Kelly first meets Vick. A little background: Vick is a what you might call a super soldier. She was injured in a training accident, which caused a large portion of her to be replaced with mechanical parts, including a large part of her brain is now replaced by what is rapidly becoming a sentient computer. So she literally hears voices in her head and has an alter ego going on in there as well, which makes her worry quite a bit. Um, and Kelly is the empath who eventually is hired by Vick's mercenary soldier operation to help Vick deal with her emotions. Kelly is an empath who just graduated from college, from a training program in for those with special abilities like she has, and so she is going to be hopefully hired to help Vick deal with all of the mental and psychological and emotional issues that Vick has. So I'm going to begin reading chapter 2, which is called Meeting of the Minds. And I will read a couple of scenes if my voice holds out from chapter 2. Recyclers filtered and processed the air I breathed, and if I looked up and up, I could make out the sheen of the main protective dome and the glitter of stars beyond. There on the landing platform at Girard Moon Base, I stood awkwardly with the other passengers disembarking the shuttle from Earth. We were both outside and not, within the dome, but outside the colony's prefabricated buildings. Graduation was only a month behind me, and already I was a long, long way from the Academy for Special Abilities. The gravity here was artificially increased as well. The hum of generators created a constant vibration I would have had to adjust to. Irritating but manageable. Kelly LaSalle, I'm Lyle Waters. I'm here to escort you to the Storm's headquarters. I jumped. Damn, no one should have been able to get that close without me sensing them. Not the best first impression you're giving, Kelly. I smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from my cream-colored business skirt, then tightened the hairband around my ponytail. Anything to cover my unprofessional startle. Stepping away from the ramp, I nodded to the soldier. How long were you waiting there? In other words, how long was he watching me gawk like a tourist? Caught the empath by surprise, huh? Teasing. He's teasing me. Don't stress about it. Except I wanted this job, or at least thought I did. I scanned him from head to boots, a long scan, considering he towered over me. Red hair, brown eyes, a sprinkling of freckles. Good build, a given for fighters. No visible weapons. His tan uniform shirt bore a patch embroidered with his last name. He was older than me, probably somewhere in his mid to late 20s. I forced a smile and shook the offered hand. You ready for this? He took my bag and started across the shuttle platform. I fell into step behind him. The Fighting Storm, a mercenary military organization, had a test subject. I hated this term, who had suffered severe brain damage. Despite implementation of regulating devices, their patient was no longer able to express and absorb her emotions in a reasonable, rational manner. If I met the storm's requirements, they wanted to train me to be part of some kind of team, pair me with this individual on missions, and have me provide ongoing emotional support to enable her to function in the field. Their science research team assured me that if they found the right empathic match, their patient would be capable of continuing to work as a soldier. Specific details were withheld due to them being classified, but I had absolutely no doubt this person needed the services of a good empath. I don't even know what this is exactly, I admitted. I had to yell to be heard over shuttle engines, air processors, and ground vehicles carrying luggage to the terminal ahead. Your boss has offered me a brief description, an interview, and a first-class ticket. It sounded interesting. I could have taken a cushier planet-side job in one of the hospital's psychiatric wards, or gone into school or marriage counseling, or joined my mother working for the one world government, helping different cultures understand one another better, promoting world peace. But I wanted something different. Walters snorted and kept walking while I hurried to keep pace. Yeah, interesting is one word for it. Impossible might be a better one. We've had 4 empaths out before you, all of them older, one with prior military experience. No one can handle VC1. Sooner or later, they'll have to shut the project down. I didn't like the way he said that. What's a VC1? Could he possibly have meant the patient? And what did he mean, shut it down? You'll see. At my frown, he added, I'm not authorized to give details. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. We proceeded into the terminal, passing through an airlock, its hydraulic hiss loud but comforting to an earther like me. When I commented on it, Walters explained the structures like the terminal were there first, so every building had airlocks instead of doors, and we go through a lot of them. The domes, one main one, and a series of smaller ones connected by airlocks and enclosed walkways, were built later, so truly interior locks remained fixed in their open positions while the exterior ones continued to operate normally. The crowd of travelers thinned the farther into the structure we went. The few people in this area all wore the Fighting Storm uniforms and moved with purpose, though some pairs laughed and exchanged conversation as they walked. Perimeter hallways displayed hollows of recruitment posters, smiling uniformed men and women beckoning the eager and naive youth to join up, see the universe, have adventures beyond their imaginations. With my empathic sense, I touched a few of the soldiers we passed, picking up boredom along with high levels of barely restrained aggression. There was guilt, too, and stress, and a smattering of depression, and I wondered what battles these soldiers had fought, won, and lost. Maybe this wasn't such a great idea. Sooner or later, my guide had said, they'll have to shut the project down. Something about that statement and the way in which Walters delivered it sent chills crawling up my spine. If the Fighting Storm shut down the project, what happened to the patient? If the patient was the project, what did shutting it down mean exactly? More hallways, and we arrived at a door where a grim-faced woman in the same brown uniform and all the other members of the Storm I'd seen checked my identification. She scanned my fingerprints and retinas and presumably compared them to the ones on file at my academy. The woman meant business, a holstered pistol visible at her side. She carried the first weapon I'd seen on any of the Fighting Storm's personnel, and I assumed I was about to enter a secure area. When she waved us along, I let out a breath. We took an elevator to another floor where wall and furnishing colors changed from utilitarian gray to medical white, and I began to associate paint choices with departments. Gray for public areas, visitor spaces, white for medical, and I assumed other colors for other services. We stepped off the lift, and we were halfway to a curved desk and a white-coated receptionist when the pain wave hit. It doubled me over, drilling like a laser through my brain, tightening all the muscles in my body, then turning them to jelly under the onslaught. My knees hit the floor, my vision went red. Shouting came from all around me, but it rose and fell in my ears, the blood pounding too hard for clear hearing. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't take in enough air, and all I managed was a wheezing gasp and a groan. I felt Walter's hand on my shoulder and jerked away from the contact, unable to take increased emotional input from him along with the pain I suffered. I squeezed my eyes shut, but tears leaked from beneath the lids. A door hissed open, and for an instant the agony swelled to even greater heights. Flashes went off behind my eyelids, and I feared I might pass out. The door closed, providing a slight buffer. Empathic pain, red vision, red mint pain. It was how my empathic sense translated emotions and feelings into something I could understand through colors. My academy instructors called it synesthetic perception. For a moment, the red blinded me. I'd spent years building and strengthening my mental walls against the emotions and feelings of others until my instructors compared my protective capabilities to 3-foot thick slabs of metal, the strongest they'd seen in 9 years. This pierced them as if they were tissue paper. Heavy footsteps rapidly approached, and something thin and sharp jabbed my neck. A few torturous moments later, a heavy fog descended, enveloping my brain, and the pain receded to a manageable level. They knew. They knew to expect my collapse. They were ready for it. What the hell? I straightened on my knees, blinking my teary vision at the gray-haired man in the lab coat crouched in front of me, the reception off to my right and Walter's on my left. Glow panels overhead reflected off the white tile floor, too bright. Walter shook his head. The woman's lips were tight and her eyes wide. The doctor, Dr. Whitehouse by the name badge clipped to his front pocket, smiled. "Congratulations," he said. "That's the strongest reaction we've seen so far. We didn't want to compromise the test by warning you." Not an apology, and definitely not good enough. I was still incapable of speech, so I glared instead. It didn't faze him. Okay, I wasn't much of a glarer. With the torture dimmed, I could analyze the source, and I realized it wasn't just pain, but a combination of various emotions so powerful that they manifested themselves as one tremendous ongoing agony. Pain, yes, but also fear, confusion, depression, anger, and overwhelming frustration. Red, purple, gray, so many colors they melded to black, and I couldn't separate them. Someone nearby suffered horribly, and with the sinking feeling in my stomach, I had a pretty good idea who. I struggled to my feet, using Walter's shoulder for support. My limbs trembled with the effort, but I started walking past the doctor, who was a little slower to rise. I reached the door behind the desk, and no one stopped me. It slid aside with a soft hiss at my approach, and I stood in a corridor. The smell hit me first. Everywhere inside the base, the recycled air had a slightly stale scent, but one could only do so much with arboretums and scrubbers. But here the air carried overtones of fear, sweat, and death. A long window taking up most of the right-hand wall, probably one-way glass, looked in on a patient room. The rolling tray table and nightstand had been demolished. The bed, metal and heavy, overturned on its side, and the remains of a lamp shattered across the tile floor. Thick wrist and ankle restraint straps dangled from the bed frame, ragged and useless. The sole occupant lay on the floor in the farthest corner. I wasn't surprised to find a woman. Her emotions, violent or not, felt feminine in nature. She faced away from the observation window and door, so I couldn't see her face, but long black hair hung down her back, in stark contrast to her torn white pajamas. The doctors had shaved one patch on her head, showing red, angry scars on the scalp. The rest of the hair twisted into a matted mess, the rips in the pajama fabric exposing wide swaths of skin covered in scratches and shallow cuts. From fingernails, I guessed her own. The doctor arrived beside me, but I couldn't tear my gaze from the woman in the corner. She slept, her back rising and falling in slow, even motions, though every few seconds she jerked violently. Even in sleep, her emotions roared, blocking out everything else, including the man on my left. I'd have given anything to be fully telepathic right then, to have been able to reach and comfort her, but no true telepaths existed, at least none we discovered yet. Right there, right then, there was only me. "What's her name?" I whispered. "VC1. I looked at him. What's her name? It came out as a growl, and he took a step back. He studied me for a moment and nodded once, like he'd come to some decision. Then he stared through the window, focusing on the patient as if seeing her for the first time. Victoria Corren, he said, his mouth twisting downward as if he'd tasted a sour fruit. She preferred Vic. Preferred, not prefers. Like post-surgery, she'd become a non-person to them. Dr. Whitehouse hated his patient, or she disgusted him, or something. I couldn't filter his emotions over the screaming of Vic's, but I didn't need empathic skills to read his expression. What happened to her? That's classified. At my huff of impatience, he added, unless we decide to give you the job. Oh, they'd offer me the position if Whitehouse had anything to say about it. He may not have liked me, but he was too excited about my reaction in the outer room. Why me? He nodded. Now I was asking the right question. You're a 91% empathic brainwave match, the closest we've found and the most likely candidate to reach her. That explained a lot. In my studies and internships at hospitals, my mentors exposed me to plenty of suffering people. Nothing hit me the way she did. Granted, she suffered more than most, but a brainwave matchup like that would have provided a direct link between her emotions and my senses and doubled or tripled the effect. And if we were to have physical contact, I shuddered. Even without much for comparison, working with Vick Corren would undoubtedly present the challenge of a lifetime. All right, well, that's when when she first encounters Vic. And of course, if you've read the book, you know that there is a long and extended relationship that proceeds from there. I guess at this point, I am going to open to questions. I will answer questions of pretty much any nature regarding writing. Anything about the book itself, the writing process, the publishing process, pretty much anything you want to know, I will be happy to answer. So fire away. Or not. Well, thank you, Victoria, and thank you, Caitlin, up above. I appreciate the emotional support. If you know me in person, you know that readings terrify me, especially in-person readings. This is a little better, except for the technology aspect, because I don't do well with tech, but apparently I'm doing okay. But the input, at least here, you can't see my knees shaking. If you attended a real live reading from me, you would have seen my knees shaking like mad, and I actually haven't had that issue. So yay, go me. I also did not lose my voice during the reading, so that is a definite plus as well. But if nobody, I do have two questions. Oh, good, yay. I have to scroll down. See, technology. So what does writing time look like nowadays? You would think that that it would be better. Unfortunately, uh, the stress and just the uncertainty. I am in lockdown with my spouse and my dogs. My daughters are away at college, but they have their own apartments, so we thought it would be safer for them to remain in their individual isolation. So it's just me and the spouse and the dogs. I am not writing as much as I would like to be. I wish I were. I have been working on uh, a new book, a new series, a little bit, but it's just not making a lot of progress right now. I think just because of the situation at hand. I am supposed to be starting edits on book 3 of this series in about a week. So writing could happen at any time of day, pretty much, because I am home. I am a teacher as well, so I am teaching from home starting tomorrow. but it's not the same kind of contact hours as I would have if I were working full time at school. Let's see. Okay, so there is a slight delay I am seeing.
Questions also appear to disappear. You had a first question, but that was how many novels have you written?
I see that one.
I don't.
All right, so someone has asked how many books have I written? So are you asking how many books I've written or how many books I've published? Because they're very different answers. I have written somewhere around 14 complete novels. I have sold 4. Now that's counting the thrilling book that I wrote as a high school student, and the I'm sure jerker gripping drama that I wrote as a college student. So they are of a dramatically varying quality, but about 14 complete manuscripts and a whole lot of bits and pieces.
Jenny asked what made you decide to write
Okay, so why did I decide to write an empath? I've always, I've always found pairing a really emotionally damaged character or emotionally struggling, damaged might be the wrong word, but certainly struggling character with someone who really understands what that person feels to be a really interesting pairing to write. So I wanted Vick to have someone in her life who actually gets her, somebody who actually understood what she was going through while nobody else around her really does, because she can't express her emotions. The only way she comes across as this is as this pretty emotionless soldier who eventually does regain the ability throughout the course of the books to demonstrate some emotional capacity, but the only one who really feels what she feels is Kelly. And so in order to accomplish that, she needed to be an empath. And of course, when you put them into a romantic relationship, um, having an empath as a lover is a very interesting thing to explore as well, because they know exactly how you feel, what you want, and when you want it. So I won't get into much more detail than that because it's sort of kind of a family show. But it's certainly more interesting when the person knows your every feeling. Scrolling down. Am I an everyday writer or do I have certain days and times? Um, Depends on if I'm in the middle of a project. So if I'm really into something, I pretty much do write every day and I try to do at least 1,000 words a day. If I am in one of those brain dead struggling periods like I seem to be right now, then I try to force myself to do at least 1 page at each day, but it doesn't always happen. I also don't have certain days or times. Obviously, I write more on weekends when I'm working full time than I do on weekdays. I tend to be more of a morning person, except right now with the shift in hours, and I don't know what day it is. I'm actually staying up later and later and later, so I'm becoming a night person, which is going to be real fun to try to transfer back when I have to go back to work at some point. But yeah, I'm usually more of a morning person and a middle of the day person. I tend to get really sleepy early because I'm old and all that. Let's see. What else have we got? Would you ever revisit the books you wrote as a high school and no. No, the bottom line on that one is absolutely not. The one from high school is about as cliche and tropey as you can get. And I do have it. I actually do have it as a printed version on lots and lots and lots of sheets of printer paper in a box in my office, but it's it's terrible. Truly, truly terrible. The one from college, I would absolutely never touch because, okay, so I was an MFA student and I was part of the very first class of MFA students at the university I was attending. And it was way back in the time where many MFAs did not permit genre fiction. So when I wanted to do my thesis and I said, well, I write sci-fi, they said, no, you don't. And, well, what about fantasy? No. Well, horror? Nope, not horror either. Romance? No. They really wanted general fiction, the great American novel, and my attempt at that was an absolute disaster. That is just not who I am. I am a total geek nerd girl at heart, and a sci-fi, I am a huge sci-fi and fantasy fan and have been since I was 7. So definitely would never ever look at that book again. Let's see. How do you balance having a public persona as a teacher and your writing persona to your students find your books? Yeah. So yeah, I had not quite realized when I said I was going to do this that it would have to go under my real name. So I'm really hoping that nobody from my school discovers this moment. I don't worry about it too much. My school is very cool with it in that my bosses do know who I am and what I write, and there's actually quite a few members of the staff that have read my work and enjoy it. So that's good to have them on my side, including my, several of my administrators know exactly what I write. But balancing the two, it's interesting because I mean, obviously L Iyer, or maybe not too obviously, but LE Iyer is a play on my real name. So I needed to pick something that I could actually respond to in public. I have finally, after a year, gotten in the habit of responding. I mean, I've had the name for a few years, but it took a full year before I could actually react to it as if it were actually my name, which is interesting at live conferences and such. People would call Elle, and I wouldn't know that they were talking to me in the first year. Do my students find my books? About once every fall, one or two students dives down the Google hole, and they figure out exactly who I am and what I write. That's always a little nerve-wracking. So far, it's never been an issue. I'm very fortunate. I live in a community that's pretty diverse. So no one's given me a hard time about it. And like I said, my administrators are cool with it. So it hasn't been an issue, but I know that it could be. So I do try to keep those worlds separate most of the time. Let's see. What made you switch viewpoints every other chapter? It's one of my favorite parts. Thank you, Caitlin. Um, I wanted people to be able to see things through both characters' eyes. So if you haven't read the book is told in alternating viewpoints from Vick and Kelly's points of view. So you see how Kelly views Vick and how she sees what Vick really feels, but you also see how Vick views the world, and you get insight into what she's really feeling as Vick perceives it, which was interesting to write and a challenge. I really wanted you to be able to see how much the two characters really love each other as the story progresses through their own eyes, seeing each other through their own eyes. And I couldn't do it without giving you chapters from their points of view. Let's see, what have I got? Do you still encounter that kind of genre discrimination? Yeah, not as much, but being a teacher makes it a little harder, so I have to be more careful than many. As far as in the publishing world, you don't want to say the only reason the big five didn't publish me is because of what I write, because that sounds very, very egotistical, and it's very possible that I'm not up to their standards. I would like to think that I am, but I don't want to make that judgment call. Uh, Certainly, the big five publishers have never published anything that I've done. I love my small press publishers; they are fantastic. I don't know if it's genre discrimination or not. I would hope that it's improving over time. I think it is. I've certainly seen writers of fiction with LGBTQ plus characters in them in the big five. So it does seem to be opening some. It seems more open in YA than it does in adult fiction. I am hoping that as those YAs grow up, it will carry over. And I think that was the last question for the moment. Of course, my shill spouse over here could feed me a question or two.
Tell us the story of Vick's origins.
So he wants me to tell the story of where Vick came from. The character of Vick Corren was originally conceived in college. I had a really good friend, and we used to write, believe it or not, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fan fiction. And one of the characters that I created for that fan fiction was Vick Corren, and she took on a life of her own. She had an entire background and family and history and all of the things that happened to her, and so I decided that she needed her own manuscripts, and so she eventually just developed into her completely own character. No turtles at all in this book. We have more questions. Yay! Because you didn't want to hear me talk about turtles anymore. Is it a goal of yours to get a book published by one of the big? Well, yes, one of the big five. Sure, I would love that. Not just because financially it would be a considerably larger amount, but also exposure to a lot wider audience, and it would also be a much bigger indicator that diversity was becoming more widely accepted in science fiction and fantasy in general if the big five were to take it. Have you and Joe ever written together? So Joe is my spouse. Have we ever written together? No, we have never written together, mostly because we write very, very different things. And suddenly my scroll feature is not working, so that's interesting. Oh, there we go. But we are each other's first readers. I trust, most of the time they'll say, do not let your spouse be your critique partner because they're only going to tell you that it's wonderful, wonderful. And that's not true for us because we're both professionally published. We both have agents. We both have been paid for our work. And so for us, it's a business, and we are pretty darn honest with each other with regard to critiquing each other's work. So I trust everything that he says. He is not going to let me put something out there that he doesn't think is good quality. And the same goes for me when I read his work as well. So we are each other's first readers. I don't think that we will ever write anything together just because what he writes, I enjoy reading it, but I don't think I would enjoy writing it. And I'm sure that's true for him as well. Let's see. Did you talk about Patchwork yet? Tell us when we can get it and highlights and a teaser. So Patchwork is the sequel to Threadbare that I just read you a piece of. It comes out on April 7th. It is available for pre-order on Dream Spinner's website and I believe Amazon as well. It is it's going to take things in a very emotionally roller coaster direction. So just kind of brace yourself. It's incredible. It's a lot darker, I think. And then Threadbare is pretty dark, but I think Patchwork might actually. It has some very light moments, but I think overall it's probably darker than the first book. Vick makes some very important relationship decisions in the book. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but I think it does justice to the series. I hope it holds up as well as Threadbare does. And I don't see. Are there more questions? Nope. Okay. I have 20 minutes. And thank you for all the love. Thank you. TMNT fan fiction is adorable. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to write. It was really. I was a huge Ninja Turtle fan because there were four of us, and four of us at college were best friends, and we were always together. And we went to see the live action Ninja Turtle movie when we were all brain fried from studying for final exams. And each one of us took on a persona and kind of became nicknamed after the turtles. You could probably guess that I was Raphael, but it was a lot of fun. Okay, so how do you keep the momentum going on book 2? So because Vick has been in my head since college, I have been living with her character, coming up with different plots that she could explore different adventures, different tragedies, different romances for about 25 years. And so I had a lot of back material that I could work with. She actually had a completely other book that got me my first agent, but it unfortunately did not sell. And I eventually scrapped that and rewrote it from the ground up because I just had so much material to work with. She's the one character that stuck with me forever. Um, and so writing book two and with the momentum, it really wasn't too difficult because I had maybe 7 or 8 different storylines that I was going to pick from, and could continue writing the series for quite some time if I wanted to. I'm going to take a break, I think, and do something different for a while, but I could write a lot more books in this series after book three. So I just kind of basically just rolled right into it. I immediately started writing book two as soon as book three was turned in. Would I ever self-publish? If they dropped the series, I probably would. I certainly would not want to leave people hanging in the middle of a series. The trilogy, the Stormfronts trilogy, does come to a pretty solid conclusion, but I did have 6 others that are not unwritten, but they are mentally planned that I could do 2 more trilogies with those characters. So if they choose not to continue to publish those for me, I might go ahead and write them and self-publish them someday. I prefer to be traditionally published, mostly because I don't I don't want to do all the other things that I know that self-published authors have to do. Um, Partially because I don't have the skill set that a lot of self-published authors have. I have an editing team from my publisher, and I mean I'm a decent editor, but I would never hire myself out to do it, and so I'm not going to do it for myself. And it's not something I want to do. I certainly wouldn't want to design my own cover art, and I don't have a lot of money to put out to do those things. So I would only self-publish if my publisher dropped the series at this time. That doesn't mean the future won't change it. What's the third book going to be called? The third book is Woven, and if you're keeping track of the titles, they are all weaving or sewing or something to do with that kind of theme. Um, Threadbare. The title is based on the fact that as Vick's sanity deteriorates, her artificial intelligence, part of her brain, shows it to her as unraveling cords. And the more the cords unravel and the more that they snap, the more that Vick realizes her sanity is going, and the more she realizes she needs Kelly's help. So that's why book one is called Threadbare. Patchwork, you can make some guesses as to why it's called Patchwork, but she's kind of piecing herself back together. And Woven being the third book in the series. Hopefully some things come together for her that will stay together by that point. What does my writing space look like? Anywhere I put my butt down. Um, Usually it's the couch. I can write pretty much anywhere. So I don't have any designated space. This is the cleanest spot in the house. That's why I'm doing this here. But usually the living room couch where I have this lovely, where I can like stretch out and it's really, really comfortable. And I can write there. We used to travel around back before the pause times and write in different Disney bars and Starbucks and pretty much anything. Background noise doesn't really bother me. It's kind of just kind of white noise to me. So I can write in a busy area and I can write in a quiet area, and it really doesn't make any difference. Uh, yes, I was Raphael. I had an attitude problem. If you've met me, you've probably seen it. Okay, I think I've run out of questions again. I see some of you guessed that it was Raphael. Not a hard guess.
When did you begin to believe that you were going to get
So can I give you credit for that?
published?
So the spouse wants me to say wants me to answer when I believed that I was when did I begin to believe that I was going to be published? I don't know. It's still kind of shocking to me. You know, I persevered a lot. I sent out a lot of queries. I worked for years to get an agent. I've had 4 agents over time. My first one was I got my first one 11 years ago. So you can tell it's been a long process. I loved all my agents. We're all still friends. It just sometimes things didn't work the way that we thought it was going to work. So I guess when I finally found an agent who didn't just get the work, but also understood me as a writer, and we really clicked because we had a lot in common. Um, I kind of figured that if I was going to sell it, she was going to sell Threadbare. Now, I actually sold Vicious Circle before that, but I sold that on my own and then got an agent to represent that contract. So the first book that actually was sold through an agent was Threadbare. And I guess I just, I figured by having written 10 or 12 books and I was getting a lot more positive feedback and the agent letters were coming back with really good positive comments, and I figured that it was getting close. Um, let's see. Favorite drinks and snacks while working? I don't really, because if I did, I would put on a ton of weight. Um, you know, Coke Zero, and right now I'm drinking tea with a little rum in it because my voice is going. I don't eat, I don't snack. I really just, I don't snack at all. If I have any kind of treat, it's at the end of a meal, and I don't tend to eat anything between meals. Coffee, yes, absolutely. Starbucks. Um, I'm a huge fan of the smoked butterscotch and the white chocolate mochas. So one of those per day, or I'd be bouncing off all the walls. But I don't tend to eat anything when I'm working. Maybe because it's the technology and I'm afraid I'll like get crumbs in it or something. Do you have a different ritual or spot that you draft versus when you edit? Mm-mm. No, it's all pretty much the same. I love both. I prefer drafting to editing. I draft in longer bursts than when I edit. I'll do a chapter at a time. Blue would make me think. Oh, okay. Let's see. Am I missing one?
Tips
Tips for
for querying.
querying. Um, let's see. What can I say for querying? Query widely. And my spouse would actually contradict this. If you've ever seen one of our presentations on querying tips and tricks, we have very different approaches. Mine was to query a lot of agents at one time, because a lot of people go top down. They'll query the biggest agents first, and then they get very discouraged because they're the biggest agents, because they represent only the very top, multi-published authors. In many cases, they don't take on very many new writers. So a lot of writers will give up because they get rejected very quickly if they're going top down. If you query a wide variety of agents that you would want to have, you're likely to get a mix of feedback. And also, once you get an offer, regardless of the agent, you can then tell the other agents you've queried, the top ones included, that you have an offer, and a lot of times they will then give you a lot more attention. I know that happened with me. I've been offered representation 13 times, and 7 of them at one shot. My second agent, I had 7 offers on that book. That was Vicious Circle, which did eventually sell. And one of the reasons I had so many offers is because as soon as I had one offer, I let a lot of other agents know that I had an offer. And I actually was told that they weren't going to look at it until they knew that I had an offer on the table for an agent representing me. Not that I had an offer of publication, but that I had an offer of an agent to represent me. So a lot of the bigger ones, and I've seen them give this information in interviews as well, a lot of the biggest agents won't respond until you contact them and say you already have an offer of representation, and then suddenly they want to see the book. So don't give up after a handful. My first agent, I queried 108 before I signed with my first agent. My second time was about 300, I think, because I was querying two different books at the same time. So about 150 went to one set of agents. About 150 for one book went to one set of agents, and about 150 queries for the other book went to another set of agents. And that's how I ended up with 7 offers. And the third time around was again about 100 queries out there before, and I had 3 offers on that round. And then my fourth one, I only sent 1. So because I had already met her and knew her, and she had actually offered me representation during my third round, and I turned her down. And she understood because she was very, very new, and she totally got that, and she was super, super sweet about it, and we stayed friends. And so by the time I was looking for a fourth agent, she had made quite a name for herself, and she still wanted to represent the work. So it was basically a matter of saying, "Hey, do you still want this?" And she's like, yep, absolutely. And that was it. Easiest agent hunt ever. Smoked butterscotch is yummy. Yes, absolutely. Plotter or pantser? I am a pantser, um, somewhere between a pantser and a combo, or plantser, I guess some people call it. I will kind of plan 3 chapters and then wing those 3 chapters. And when I get to the end, I'll kind of see if I stuck with the plan or if I went off in some crazy tangent, which is often the case. And then I'll kind of think through the next 2 or 3 chapters and see if I really wanted to go there and write those. So I do kind of plan, but it's all in my head. I don't write down much of what I plan other than like maybe a line here, like have Vic do this, have Kelly say that. Don't forget to put this in there. But other than that, I really don't plan much at all. When I initially start a book, I often don't have a clear path. I usually have a character who I am really emotionally involved in, and a love interest for that character who I'm almost as emotionally involved in, and some tragic thing to happen to them. And that's pretty much it. And then I just kind of launch from there and see where it goes. What kind of rum? You want to know what kind of rum? It is vanilla rum. It is Cruzan vanilla rum, but I also love coconut rum. Um, but coconut rum and tea doesn't taste very good. Vanilla rum does taste really good. And I'm having vanilla tea with just a tiny bit of vanilla rum for the voice, which you could probably hear is kind of rough. Yeah, it's just for the voice. No other reason. It's funny because I'm seeing all the hearts and smiley faces, but I know there's a lag. And thank you for that. That's helping my nerves a lot. But I don't know exactly what they're for, which comment, because the lag is such that I'm getting them after the fact. I guess that one was for the rum. I have a question. Oh, good. Let's see. Who have been your biggest influences? Um, well, let's see. Author-wise, Anne McCaffrey was probably my first. She and I regret that I did not get to meet her. I was supposed to. She was coming to Dragon Con and we had to cancel for financial reasons at the last minute. And then the following year she passed away. And that was really crushing because I never actually got into the Dragon Rider stuff. I read all of her science fiction, including some empathic characters. My favorites were the Crystal Singer trilogy because she had sung opera before she became a science fiction author. And I also sang opera for about 8 years. I was the youngest member of my opera company at 12. Um, and so I loved that she was able to incorporate vocal terminology into that series. I absolutely loved that series. I love Elizabeth Moon. I love Tanya Huff. I love Linnea Sinclair because Linnea Sinclair was one of the first I saw that really did what was termed science fiction romance. And she and I are friends, and she met me when I was just getting started, and she is just the most wonderful, wonderful person in person. She took me on as her mentoree and mentored me all the way until I got my first agent. And of course, we're still friends, and if I need advice, I can always go to her. So she's amazing. As far as influences in other media, I love Xena. And when we first pitched Vicious Circle, we pitched it as Xena Warrior Princess in Space, where the subtext is the main text. I also am a huge Batwoman fan. So if you haven't seen Batwoman, I love Ruby Rose and think she's amazing. So those were huge influences. Obviously, Princess Leia, the Bionic Woman, Wonder Woman, Captain Marvel, all really big influences on my powerful female characters. How many more books have you read this month than a typical month? A lot, a lot. Being home, and we've been in isolation now for more than 2 weeks. So I am reading a book every 1 to 2 days, which is great. I can't say I love the isolation part, but I do love being able to read all of these books by all of these wonderful, wonderful authors. Yes, I miss karaoke too. I love that I have people in here who are from writing groups that I know. People are in here from my karaoke groups. People are in here from conferences that I've met. Thank you so much. Good. Oh, I have another question. Book recommendations. Um, well, I'm definitely going to recommend MB Austin's books. She writes the Maji Rios books, and I think she's actually here, or she was here briefly. I mean, I don't know if she's still here. But MB Austin writes these really awesome um, female action suspense thrillers that I thought were amazing, called the Maji Rios novels. Check those out; they are amazing. I love Tina Michelle's work. Again, Elizabeth Moon writes great military science fiction with really strong female characters, as does Tanya Huff. I absolutely adore Jean Johnson's Theirs Is Not to Reason Why series. Those are fantastic. Any tips for someone looking traditionally pub? It's a long, long, long process. Oh yay, look, MB is here and blushing. Yep, you should be, but it's okay. Um, yes, you need an agent. Even though with a small traditional press, technically I could have gone into it without an agent. I am ecstatic that I have one. And there are multiple reasons why. For one thing, she makes sure that my work is that I'm not slacking off, because sometimes, we all get a little lazy and we throw that extra adverb in there, and we ignore that plot hole that we know needs to really be fixed. She makes sure that she's holding me to the highest standards. Um, she is really good about playing the bad guy if somebody needs to go to battle over a payment or a book cover or whatever. And I'm not complaining, by the way. I love my book covers and I love my cover artists. So that's just an example. That's not for me, but it's good when you have a middle person who can be the aggressive one, so that the author doesn't have to. Um, the agent really also pays for herself, because I can tell you that the contract that I was originally offered was not nearly as good as the contract that I ended up with. And I wouldn't have known what to ask for, but she certainly did, and managed to get me much better terms and a better advance than I would have gotten by myself. So definitely, I would say you need an agent. You need to run your query letter by some people. Don't try to just talk. Don't try to just send it out there. Make sure that you get feedback on that query before you start sending it out. Join a writing group. Right now, I would say join a virtual writing group, but certainly they exist. What else? Traditional publishing. Be prepared to not sell your first book or your second or possibly your third. It was my fourth book that sold. So, it actually, no, it was my fourth book that got an agent. It was my fifth book that sold. So, you're constantly improving and building on your skill set and your craft. And it takes a long time. It's not something that's going to usually happen overnight. Don't keep trying to fix the same book. Write new ones, level up, use your new skill set, and move forward from there. But make sure you've got a lot of eyes on it. Okay, I think I have time for one more, maybe. Well, I'm going to do a quick plug then. If you have a writing group that meets virtually or you're looking to go virtual, I certainly am happy to Zoom in or Facebook Live in or whatever and give and do talks on different things. And I also present often with my spouse, and we present on a wide variety of topics. We do writing query letters, we do online and in-person networking, we do synopses, we do finding an agent, working with an agent. He does a lot more craft things. I do writing sex scenes, which is always fun. So a lot of different topics that we can present on, and there's a lot more. I just can't think of them all right now. So if you have a group and you are looking to bring in a speaker, please contact us because we have lots of time and we're happy to do it. Let's see, we have one more question. It says, when do you stop trying to fix a book? For me, if I complete the book and I think from maybe I give up a little too early, I don't know, but if the fixing is going to be so complicated that it's going to cause me to tear it apart, I'm probably going to go and write something else. Now, for me, I write really quickly, so it's not perhaps as big a deal for me to scrap something and start over as it might be for someone who takes a longer time to write it in the first place, and it would be a lot harder to give that up. I can crank out a book in 3 to 6 months. Usually about 4 months is my sweet timeline. But yeah, if the fixing that my critique partners and my agent are telling me need to be done are going to take me longer than it took me to write the book, I'm probably going to put that one aside. And if I find I have a lot of extra time after I write the next book, I might go tackle it, but probably not. Certainly, if a whole year goes by or a couple of years go by and I still haven't done anything with that, I'm probably going to put that on the back burner and store it somewhere and write something else. If it's been shopped and not had any success, I'm not going to rewrite it. Now, the exception was Threadbare because it was written, it was shopped, and it did not sell, and then I rewrote it. But when I say I rewrote it, the only thing I kept was the main character, Vick Corren. Every single other thing was cut. And I just took her and gave her an entirely new adventure and a romance. The original book did not have a romance. So when I rewrite, it means I am rewriting. And almost 99% of it is going to be gone. Not trying to fix something, I'm going to really scrap it and start over. So, and we have 1 minute. Does anybody have one last question? All right. Well, I think this was the story about Vick is inspiring me. Time to get to work. Yay! So this is it. Thank you so much for being here for my first foray into virtual readings. I have never done this before. I hope it was okay. And thank you again. And I hope that if you haven't read Threadbare, that you'll give it a try. It is the book of my heart. It is the book that I'm closest to. And then, as I said, the sequel comes out in 9 days. That is Patchwork. And I will see you soon, hopefully in the real world. Bye.